Lawnmowers are heavy polluters. A weed eater pollutes more in 1 hour than 40 of our automobiles in the same amount of time. 1 hour of weed eater, 40 code. That's how much the weed eaters and these other trimmers are polluting. So what's the alternative? Get a push mower. We used to do it this way. Hand clippers will do a great job of trimming. Of course, instead of the leaf blower, why not get an old-fashioned rake? And if it's a big, overwhelming project for you, then it's time to change the landscape. Replace your lawn. It'll be lower maintenance when you have perennials out there. Use ground covers in those areas. You heard a little bit about this in the previous speaker. And put in the native wildflowers. You don't have to water these areas, and they're beautiful. You know how beautiful the wildflowers are here in Texas, and the native grasses. So this is one of the types of things that we can do. We're going to see a change in that type of equipment, and it may even, before too long, be pulled off of the market. So instead of planting some of the invasive species, like I mentioned earlier, there are many alternatives to these plants at these websites. The first one is the Native Plant Society of Texas.org, an easy one to remember. And the Wildflower Center's website is wildflower.org. These are going to be great resources for you when you decide to make the change. They will describe the alternatives to you. And make sure that you start putting in these natives and keep a nice diversity out there. No matter what happens during the season, the hummingbirds, the butterflies, and other parts of our native environment need to be kept going. We're beginning to introduce plants for the hummingbirds and the butterflies that they never fed on in the past. And these plants may need more water. They're not the best adapted to our environment. And the natives are out there to do the same job the way it was done historically. So look up more of those native plants for the hummingbirds and the butterflies, and let's get rid of some of those water-soaking plants. And it'll be a beautiful landscape anyway. When you learn how to design with these things, you'll see that it ends up being as beautiful as anything, low water use, low maintenance. Reduce water consumption. We have to do this. And so rain barrels, rain collection systems are the best way to do this. Use a drip irrigation system. There are many different types out there, and it's going to be mandatory. And of course, plant drought-resistant plants. This is important. These are the kinds of changes the gardener can make. This is an example of what's called a rain garden. A rain garden has been around just a few years, at least the concept of it. And if you're not collecting rainwater or your tanks just don't hold anymore, instead of the water leaving the property, let's keep it on the property. Let's let it soak in better. And so a rain garden is down where the water is flowing towards the street. You open up that soil, make it more permeable, and the water will then soak into that and never leave the property. And this is very important. We need that water, and it'll soak into the ground. And if you know somebody using chemicals, I know you all don't. But if you do, those things are water soluble and they make it down to our creeks and streams. And so if you're using something like that, it'll stay in the yard where it belongs. It shouldn't be leaving your yard. Of course, we need to compost. Organic material should really never leave the property. And if you have a compost pile, don't just let it sit there. The rotting material creates methane gas, and that's not something that we want in the environment. So let's turn that pile with some frequency. Let's let it break down the way we're supposed to do it, by turning the pile. Then we don't produce any more methane gas. This is very important. Organic matter shouldn't be hauled off to the landfill. Food scraps, all of these things that we tend to throw away, when they end up in the landfill, then the methane is produced right there. This is another environmental problem. So, and when you make compost, it's better than any chemical fertilizer out there. And if you want to test this idea, make a little area, like a 10 by 10 spot in your yard, put a quarter to a half an inch of compost on that, and none of the other products on the market will be able to match up the rest of the yard to that. It'll be beautiful. You'll find that spot at night in your bare feet. It'll be so lush and nice and thick. Here's some new ideas that are happening. I'm about to do the one on the left. These are green roofs. And instead of just that hot metal roof up there, we're planting gardens. This is happening all over on tall buildings in New York. We're seeing it in Austin too, probably quite a few in this area. You can plant up there, and that will really reduce the heat coming down to the house. And of course, we all know about using trees to help us. If we use a deciduous tree, we can warm the house in the winter, and in the summertime, make it cooler, just by protecting it from the sun. One of the other things we really need to keep doing, you know, there are 91 million households in this country that garden. And so if every one of them planted only one tree, whether it was at a school or in a park or in the home, we would absorb 2.25 million tons of CO2 per year, which means over 40 years, nearly 100 million tons of CO2 will be absorbed from the atmosphere. This is something that we really need to do. I've been selling trees for many, many years, and in some developments around the store, one of the developments cut down more trees than I've sold in 30 years. So we need to think about this, and we can't control those developers, I don't think, but we can certainly try to make up for the damage that they're doing to the environment by simply planting one tree. And if we could do one every year, these are the kinds of benefits that a home gardener can create for the environment and feel good about it. So what we need to do is in our communities get a neighborhood association to create a wildlife habitat. And the National Wildlife Federation can help you with that. Instead of a garden here and a garden there and another one somewhere else doing this, why not get everybody to create a long area that will increase habitat over larger areas? We'll connect the habitats once again. You can see over here, this is off the Washington coast. It's a little hard to read, but they are also beginning to certify some of their communities as habitats, and they're doing other things to help create habitat and bring back some of these areas where the animals would move through back and forth, but they're being divided up by development. So we're going back in that direction. And of course, encourage local home and garden retailers to carry energy efficient products. If everybody put in only one of those bulbs, it would be a tremendous savings to our energy sources. And of course, the other thing to do is have the nurseries carry more native plants. It's about time that this happened big time. And so the only way you're going to get them to do this, and I don't think we'll ever get the chain stores to do this, but maybe we can force them into it by asking for these things. And when they don't have them, we leave. How many times are they going to let a customer leave without making the changes that are necessary to help us with our native plants? Native plants are beautiful, and they're well adapted, low water use, few insect problems. I mean, this is the direction we need to be going in. We also need to contact our elected officials and urge them to implement a strong plan of action to combat warming today. This is something that we can do. These are all things that a home gardener can do to make a difference in the environment, and it's also important that we get after this. So I want to thank these folks, the National Wildlife Federation, and of course Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center for giving me some of this information to help us change. Thank you all very much. If you have questions, I'd be glad to take questions. Yes.
Well, I want to tell people it's tax-free weekend now till Monday to buy all the energy efficient products. You can buy the President bulb, you can buy anything that's Energy Star. Right now, without the 8% sales tax
Yeah.
you can have.
So it's only on those products?
Right, it's only on
Energy Star.
efficient products.
Okay,
you know.
so good. So it's a tax-free
There's
weekend
a
on
tax-free
energy efficient
weekend
products.
this weekend, right now. This is the best
Yeah.
time to save 8% on all the
So we're beginning to see the changes already in the purchasing. Anybody else have a question? Well, thank you all for sitting in. I know it was a different talk for you, but I think it was one of the more important talks that I'm beginning to do these days. Thank you very much.